use this as a whiteboard to write a few things.
Screen or Zoom is right orientation. Shri Krishna Chaitanya Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna.
Glad to be here, all of you today. And so let's look at what this verse is saying, and then we will look at how we can analyze it for applying in our lives. So basically, what is being, she's saying that you are blind. Anarthadarshini. Darshan is see. So you have become blinded. And what he's saying is blindness is because of foolishness. And foolishness has led to blindness. And what is the result of the blindness? The result of this blindness is you're not seeing that there is this ocean. This is the ocean of distress, of danger and distress. And basically saying because you're blind, you are not seeing that you are drowning in this ocean. That you are drowning. So because of blindness caused by foolishness, you are not able to perceive the danger that you are in. To take another example, somebody is driving very fast on a road which is just ending in a cliff. And from the cliff, you just fall off. Are you not seeing what is ahead of you? How can you not see? How can you be so foolish? She's saying. I will not rehash the story. Most of you know the story. Yesterday, it was depicted beautifully by the Rama also. So I'll just talk about two broad outline key points of the story, and then we'll look at what it implies. So broadly speaking, we can say with respect to the story that Manthara here is like our mind. And Kaikeyi is meant to be like the intelligence. So, in general, if you see what happened inside that small chamber in the palace, in Kaikeyi's inner chambers, what happened eventually that escalated and caused havoc in the entire kingdom. It all started in a small chamber. So like that, what goes on inside our head? What various thoughts, ideas, they come in, they go around. And what goes inside our head, that eventually escalates. So, and it can cause great devastation. So what happened inside? In general, most of us have some kind of plan or vision for our life. okay, what am I going to do in the future? Okay, right now I'm a student. In the future, when I get a job, then I'll get married, I'll have a house, I'll have children, and do this and do that. Now, nobody can fully or clearly predict the future, but we have a broad plan for us. It could be a long-term plan, a middle-term plan. Okay, in 5 years I'll be doing this, something like that. So we all have a plan for us. And that plan, to some extent, is based on our intentions. Now, when we make a plan, we might have a straight plan like this, but life rarely goes straight, isn't it? So life often means that there are twists and turns. And sometimes we keep moving in the direction of the plan. Sometimes it may even happen that we are going in this direction and then make a complete U-turn. We will plan something else at that, or we may change our plan. We may have to change our plan, we may change our plan, whatever it is. But the broad understanding is that even if it's not a clearly articulated plan, we have some direction for it. And generally, based on the direction of our life, we make our choices. We have to make hundreds of choices at every moment. And if we had to consciously analyze every choice, we wouldn't be able to function. Right now, all of you are sitting here and hearing this class. Now, every one of you is confident that the person sitting next to you is not suddenly going to make the choice to turn around and slap the label with this. Now we could say, hypothetically, anything is possible. But we understand that if somebody has come for a spiritual talk, or even if you go to college, you go to school, you don't expect the person next to you, unless that person is really bad at you or some reason, then you may not sit next to that person. But so we basically, based on our overall understanding of purpose, certain choices get ruled out. So, for example, if you come for a talk, then it's understood that you may decide where you want to sit, whether you want to sit behind, you want to sit in a chair on the floor. But it's understood if you come for a talk, you're not going to sit with your back to the speaker. Those choices are ruled out. And we don't even have to think about those choices. So basically, in general for us, we could say that we could have an almost infinite choices. But infinite choices would overwhelm us. And that is why we need to have some constraint on our choices. So for example, if I had to go from place A to place B, now you could go by the straight road, maybe you could go by another road, maybe you could go by a third road. But we cannot go this way. Then you know where to be. So in general, there's a purpose which brings a framework for our choices. The purpose may not govern entire choice. So yes, we could say if I'm coming for this program, the straight road is the best. But if you come to know there's a traffic situation over there, you might go by another road. Or you have to pick up someone else, and to go do some other errand along the way, might go another way. But it is important for us to constrain our choices. Otherwise, the sheer number of choices can actually paralyze us, can overwhelm us. If you have a small child, and maybe 3, 4, 5, 7, 8, whatever. So if the child has 100 clothes, and in the morning wake up and tell, okay, look at the 100 clothes and choose which clothes you want. Now who will I choose? On the other hand, you tell the child, hey, you have to get this clothes. The child is unhappy. Why can't I choose? But you tell the child, okay, these 3 clothes, you choose which you like. He's happy, I got a choice. And so the choice is meant to give us a sense of freedom, not meant to cause us a burden. That's one of the problems with say supermarkets or online shopping. You want to buy one toothpaste. Just go on Amazon. There will be 500 brands of toothpaste. And how do you choose? So sometimes too much choice can overwhelm us. So in general, what constrains our choices is our purpose. So when we have some sense of purpose, what am I doing over there? Then, okay, I will go to school or I will go to this function. And then we as parents may decide for this function, this kind of clothes are suitable, this kind of clothes are not suitable. Okay, I have to buy a toothpaste. I want to have hygiene, I want to have, say, not a bad smell from my mouth. I want it in a particular budget. We all may have particular constraints for our choices, but constraining our choices is very important. And in general, for us, within us, there are two factors. We consider our inner world. There is the soul, there is the body. And in between, we can say there is the mind and the intelligence. So the mind and intelligence can be seen as two paths. So the mind is the path where primarily emotion is experienced. And intelligence is the path through which reason is utilized. So for example, when you have to make a decision, I feel good doing this. That's why I want to do it. So what food do you want to eat today? Okay. But somebody may say like food which is not very healthy. Then we say, okay, can you eat this one? No, I don't like it. So what we do is, in general, when our choices, so the first constraint of for our choices comes from our purpose. I'll connect that with the mind intelligence model. Basically, if we have a set of things which our mind likes, that means we have positive emotion associated with it. And then there is what happened? So there is a set of things which say our intelligence approves. That means we can give sound reasons for it. Now, in general, the wise choices fall over here, where something that our mind likes and the intelligence approves. It's easy to make the choice. Now, sometimes, so we could say the optimal is over here, where we don't have to fight against our feelings. Then the second would be over here. Sometimes we have to do things which don't feel good, but we know they are good for me, so we do. The most suboptimal would be here, where our mind pushes us. I want to do this and I don't care about this. So those are the least optimal choices. So now when we are going through this whole panorama of choices, sometimes generally the nature of the mind is change. And that's why the only constraint for the mind is what I like, what I don't like. That's all. But what is good, what is not good, that is not a constraint for them. Every part of us is constantly choosing because our consciousness is limited. We can't focus on everything. So now if we consider, there are broadly 4 situations possible in our universe. That now these are not necessarily 4 exclusive exhaustive situations, but let's look at them broadly and then we will understand how it works. Say, if we consider intelligence approves, mind likes. So we could say the best is this, where the intelligence also approves, the mind also likes. The second is where the intelligence approves, the mind does not like. The third is the mind likes, but the intelligence does not approve. And the fourth is the worst. Fourth is worst means what is happening is mind does not like, the intelligence also does not approve. So why do we do it? Because we are forced by someone. So, sorry?
Possibly instruction.
Yeah. But boss may give us some assignment we just don't like at all. It just like sometimes some boss may give us some assignment which is going to help our career grow. So okay, I don't like it, but I'll do it. But sometimes the boss just passes on work which no one wants to do. It just, it's just mechanical, boring work. You're not learning anything valuable. You don't like it. So now sometimes we have to do the work also. So overall, for us, this mind intelligence dynamic is there. So we could say here, if you put it in one particular way, that mind and intelligence both are pointing in the same direction. Here, what is happening is the intelligence is pointing in one direction, the mind is pointing in another direction. But the way I've drawn the arrow, the intelligence arrow is longer. It means the intelligence is really good. But here what happens is the mind is pointing in one direction, the intelligence is pointing in another direction. But the intelligence is weaker. So when this happens, then we sometimes end up doing things which we don't. Now here is of course the mind and intelligence are both pointing in one direction, and yet something is dragging us in another direction. That is really a state of mystery. I hope at least for the present class you're not there.
Second case.
Sometimes I don't like you when you're honest. So now we consider whenever decision happens, either the mind or there is some kind of conversation that happens. Sometimes it may be very instantaneous. You just take a decision. Sometimes we dislike certain things, there's no question of doing it. The mind does not even let the intelligence make you. No means no. Not going to do it. And sometimes something so important, the intelligence does not intervene. No matter how you think you're going to do this. But most often there is some kind of discussion that happens. And in general, in the scripture, whenever anyone makes any decision, it is while in the Ramayana, the Mahabharata, the Bhagavatam, the characters are historical characters, and the incidents described are incidents that have happened in the past. But actually, they are not just historical characters. If it had just been history alone, then there are so many incidents that have happened throughout history. It's not that every historical incident has become immortalized and has been preserved and passed on. So, in general, when I had come last time, had I talked about this concept of the difference between metaphor and metonym. So metaphor is where A represents or A is represented by B. For example, he is as powerful as a tiger. She's as graceful as a swan. So there A is compared to B. So actually A and B are two entirely different things, but they are compared. You could say they are simply being compared over. Now, so A and B are just being compared. Now, on the other hand, metonym is something different. A is a bigger reality, and B is a subset within A. And then B is used to represent A. So let me explain this. So for example, the White House declared war on Ukraine. Does that mean the White House came to life and started speaking and declared war? No. At the same time, see, the White House represents something. It represents the US government. more specifically the executive branch of the US government, the presidency. Now, does that mean the White House is just a symbol? The White House exists. There is a physical structure called the White House. But what it represents is more than what exists. So, when we use the word metonym, that is, it can be summarized as what exists is reality. But reality is more than what exists. So White House is a reality. But what is represented is much more than the House. So similarly, in Krishna Leela, when Krishna comes to this world, or when Ram Leela, the Lord's pastimes happen, what happens is history. But what happens is more than history. It is history, but to reduce it to history is to devalue its timeless importance. History is incident that happened at a particular time. Okay, it happened a long time ago, what so what? But it is something which is happened at a particular time, but which has timeless value. And the timeless value is because it teaches us moral and spiritual lessons. So we could put it this way. If you want to approach the epics, how do we approach the epics? So some might consider it is history, and that's all there is. So we may learn about American history, we may learn about Indian history, like that we learn about the Ramayana history. And some people get caught in that. Is this actually historical? Did it actually happen like this? Is it truly like this? Well, yes, it is history. But the purpose of the epics is not just to tell history. It is actually, now some people say that these are not stories, these are not historical stories. They're just stories made up to teach some values. So they're basically morality tales. So these are one is history incidents, and the other is morality tales. There are some say like even in the Vedic tradition there is the Panchatattva. The stories within the Panchatattva are not historical stories. They're just stories told to convey some wisdom, or there are Aesop's fables, or so many stories like that. So some people consider that these are simply some fable-like stories told to give some moral lessons. In the biblical tradition, Jesus tells many parables. So those are parables. But the Vedic understanding is that when the itihas is there, it is both history plus morality. Now, of course, in the morality, there are multiple levels, and ultimately it culminates in the highest spirituality, love for God, love for Krishna. But the idea is, so who is Ravana is important, but what is Ravana is even more important. So Ravana was a historical personality, but Ravana also is the selfish desire, the selfish sensual desire that is present in all of us. So that is important. So one extreme is to reduce these characters only to historical figures who are of interest only to people who have some interest in history, and that to ancient Indian history. Other is to reduce these characters only to symbols which have no historical significance. But we understand that when in the case of the epics, timeless principles are taught through timely incidents that happen at particular times. So we could say that there are timeless truths. And these timeless truths, if we consider this is the chart of time in this world. So those timeless truths are demonstrated at particular times through particular incidents. So when the Lord listens to the world, or when his great devotees are here. So then those timeless truths are manifested in this. So that's why we can Kaikeyi and Manthara are historical characters, but Kaikeyi and Manthara, they have a particular dialogue that goes on with them. And that dialogue can also represent the dialogue within us. So sometimes what happens is when somebody acts in a particular way, somebody does something, that person is so selfish. Or sometimes if I get angry with someone, somebody, why did you get so angry? I say I'm short tempered. Well, that's not really an explanation. It's like saying that if a plane crashed. Okay, why did the plane crash? There's an elaborate investigation. And at the end of it, they say the investigation means the plane crashed because of gravity. Now, is that an explanation? Well, yes and no, isn't it? Yeah, of course, if no gravity had been there, plane crash wouldn't have happened. But that is not a relevant explanation. Because planes are designed to fly in spite of gravity. So what prevented the mechanism for from working at that particular time? That is the matter of interest. So similarly for us, when we get angry, then okay, I may be short-tempered, but that does not mean 24 hours I am always yelling and screaming and venting at others. There are sometimes when my temper gets too. So we would like to know that. That's why when we do something bad, rather than simply labeling ourselves as a bad person or labeling other somebody does something bad, just saying, oh, that person is selfish, that person is foolish, that person is this, that person is that. Maybe they are like that. But what it means is that there is some kind of inner dialogue that is happening in which their lower side, their mind is weak. So, like when somebody gets angry, at that time, there is a part of them which maybe saying stay calm. Another part will explode now. It will put the other person in their place. How does that how does that part win? That is what we need to understand. And to the extent we understand that, to that extent we can help that person or we can help ourselves. So simply labeling ourselves is not very helpful. Okay, I'm short tempered. What do I do after that? Is it that every time I get angry, I just justify by saying I'm short tempered? No, I need to do something about it. So sometimes we over rely on willpower. Willpower is important, no doubt. But willpower alone is not enough. I'll talk more about the role of willpower later, either in today's session or tomorrow's session. But at this stage, let's come back to this point. So we are talking about how, in general, if we have a purpose in mind, that constrains our choices. So what happens is that where is that purpose present? Generally in our intentions. The mind can also have its purpose, but mind's purpose is short term. I enjoy this, let me eat this. I enjoy this, let me watch this, let me buy this. The intelligence has some bigger purposes. So if somebody has a purpose, I'm saving to buy a bigger house. Then just because I see a nice TV advertised or a nice phone advertised, I won't buy a very expensive phone or a TV. Yeah, I have to save. That bigger purpose is there in the mind. Then by that itself constrains some of our choices. So we are trying to understand here, how is it that Kaikeyi, she just made a complete U-turn in her life. She was a devoted wife and she loved Ram. And yet she made a choice which hurt Ram and which hurt her husband. So what exactly went on over there? And because he just like, oh, she was manipulated by Manthara, that's true. But how did Manthara manipulate? What exactly happened? If we consider for us, within us, between the mind and the intelligence, there is a constant tug of war going on. There's a constant competition. So it's constant discussion, competition, confrontation. There's basically, it's constantly going on with this. And then sometimes the mind wins over the intelligence. And sometimes the mind not only can conquer the intelligence, but the mind can even conscript the intelligence. Conscript means that the mind makes the intelligence its servant. And the mind starts using the intelligence for its own purpose. So, for example, if one situation is, say the mind is pulling us in this direction and the intelligence is pulling us in this direction, then at least there is some tension in them. But the other is this is there. Now the bad situation is the mind is pulling us and the intelligence is just quietly like going along with it. It's not. But the worst situation is the mind is here and the intelligence is here. And the intelligence justifies the mind's choices. The intelligence rationalizes the mind's choices. When that happens, then reconciliation of any kind is almost impossible. Not reconciliation, reformation. Reformation is almost impossible. So this is a situation where the mind actually makes the intelligence, rather than check us from our unhealthy choices, it makes us justify our unhealthy choices. So now this can happen in society in 1960s roundabouts. If you see any movies of the 1940s, 50s, 60s, 70s, even up to 80s, almost. I'm not saying see the movies. But if you see movies, it was quite common to see the movie start smoking. There were most of it, like they have some action scene, and after that, they coolly start smoking. And now, from the 1960s, 1970s onwards, or even a little before that, but from that time, it became very clear that smoking leads to cancer. But at that time, the tobacco companies, they just wanted their business to go. So what they got several prominent researchers from various universities to publish papers, and the three papers which actually delayed from the 1940s itself. There was the survey showing that people who smoke get cancer, but actually it sprang into mainstream consciousness almost 3-4 decades later. And the reason what they did was this paper, they said actually it is not that, say, smoking, the people who smoke were getting cancer. The logical conclusion was smoking leads to cancer. But they said actually it's not the case. They said there is some unknown gene, and that gene makes people smoke, and that gene also gives people cancer. So now they couldn't find out what the gene was, they didn't propose it. But in this way, they kept people smoking. It is not our problem, it is that the gene. People can always say no to smoking. So this is what we call as rationalizing. It is when the intelligence is used to justify the mind's life. The mind wants to do a particular thing even when it is harmful, even when it knows it's harmful. So the intelligence is perverted. Krishna talks about this intelligence in the mode of ignorance. Where it says, Adharmam dharmamitiya manyate tamasavrta sarvarthan viparitamscha buddhi saparthatam. See that tamasi intelligence in the mode of ignorance is what? That what the adharmam dharmamitiya. That which is adharma, one things to be done. And sarvarthan viparitamscha. One actually sees the opposite of the reality to be the reality. So in this case, actually what is happening is Manthara is persuading Kaikeyi. And the first way she persuades it, it's the best way to fool an intelligent person is to call them a fool. No, an intelligent person will feel insulted. Of course they'll feel insulted. But the point is, if an intelligent person starts feeling that I am being fooled, then they will immediately become cautious. So what happens is here, she's telling that you won't care. You are being a fool. Actually, while listening to Manthara, she will become a fool. But what she's saying is, if you don't listen to me, you are being a fool. So Sarvarthan Viparitam. So basically, what happens is if the intelligence is here, the mind is here. Now the mind can send misconceptions to the intelligence. And the intelligence should send back right conceptions. The mind may say, if we come to a program and then we greet someone, and that person doesn't greet us, the person snubs us. Depending on what our overall consciousness brings. Nobody cares for me. So uncaring. People don't even consider whether I'm alive or dead. What is the point even of living? So from that one snub, the mind can escalate to a huge level. At that time, the intelligence is okay. Maybe that person is thinking about something they didn't notice. Maybe they had some other burden on their head. Or we need to reason. But if the mind gives us a particular misconception, if we don't counter it, intelligence doesn't work, then what is going to happen is the mind is going to. Like sometimes we are in a meeting, and like sometimes in the meeting, some people dominate the meeting. And like they start speaking, and then the only time they stop speaking is when the meeting is over. And then the already decision is made, and we had something to say, but we didn't say it at all. And then the whole decision is made. So our brain is sometimes like, what is meant to be a dialogue becomes a monologue. The mind alone speaks, and if we don't counter it, then the mind wins the inner peace. Mind dominates the inner decision. Inner meeting. So here, Kaikeyi will actually protest. We could go deeper at the flow of the conversation, but let's have 3 points. The first point is that Kaikeyi is actually happy when she hears about Ram's coronation. She's so happy that she wants to give Manthara an award for bringing such a delightful news to her. But from that state of happy, she becomes hesitant. So, okay, why is it? How can you be so happy? This is the stage where from happy, the small, little bit suspicion, doubt, hesitation is implanted. How can you be happy like this? Can't you see the future? Future, you're going to danger, you're going to disaster. There's a conspiracy afoot. You are being sidelined. Oh, love me like his own mother. See, sometimes when the mind makes some allegations, comes up with some notions, if they are expected, then we can refute. But sometimes the mind comes with such ideas. Okay, what's wrong with it? We can't think immediately what is wrong. A part of us knows this is not right, but what is not right about it? If we can't think about that, that does not mean there is no reason. That just means that we are not putting sufficient thought at that thing, and our intelligence is not here. So sometimes we ask, somebody asks a question. Say, sometimes somebody asks philosophy, how can you prove the soul exists? Okay, we were prepared for it. But somebody asks, why do you exist? What do you mean? Why do I exist? We take our existence as a basic given. Based on that, why do I exist? What do you mean? You don't want me to exist? So we don't ever think of justifying our existence. We will think about how to bring meaning to our existence. And now we can justify our existence also, philosophically. But the point is that there are certain questions that are so unexpected that we don't know how to answer them. So initially she makes like a weak attempt. So that, after Ram, maybe Bharat will become the king. Generally, when we make an argument, we might make 5 points. But a good arguer, or you could say a bad faith arguer, they will slam on the weakest point. That may not be the most important point. That's the weakest point. After Ram and his sons will become the king. Bharat will never become the king. He's focused on that. The point was, that was like a mild defense here. Point was that Ram's coronation is not going to be a disaster. Because Ram is not really motivated. But Kaikeyi just takes that. So then from hesitant, she goes down to become almost hateful. See, there's a difference between hate and anger. Can you tell what is the difference between hate and anger? How many of you feel there is a difference between hate and anger? How many of you feel there's no difference? How many of you feel it doesn't make any difference? So, it doesn't make any difference. Oh, yeah, they're both undesirable, but actually there is a significant difference. See, anger is generally hot-headed. Anger comes like a surge, but hate is cold-blooded. So when hate comes in, it is not just for a moment. It stays on. So now hate is a very strong word to use, but here Kaikeyi is not very angry. If she had just been angry, she would have calmed down after some. She was just so completely distorted. She started feeling that Ram is the bane of my existence. He's my enemy. I have to drive him out. That's how she becomes so hard-hearted. Even Dashrath begged to her. Vasishtha implored. No one she could. So what exactly happened? How did she go from this stage of being happy to hesitant and to directly hateful? Like I said, it's a complete U-turn where she has taken this U-turn. So in general, when Manthara, what she did, Manthara, she exploited some existing weakness. And that weakness was the inherent tension between co-wives. Now, it is not that they were fighting with each other, but that's natural. That there was some tension between the co-wives. And she exploited that. And once that came in, if he had just said that, okay, Ram will become the king and Bharat will have to become his son. Okay, that's bad. So, what Manthara also said is that you have been the main and Kaushalya is inside. Kaushalya will have her. She will lord it over you. She will become the mother of the king, and then you will be no one. So, while she was thinking, I am doing this for my son, she was also concerned about her own future. And in this way, basically, when there is conversation going on between us and between our mind and our intentions, the mind is also coming. It can sometimes be childish and fickle, but sometimes it can be coming. And then it zeroes in on some weakness that we already know. And it exploits that. So basically, how did she persuade? See, from happy to hesitant, she brought that by something situational. Situational means, okay, if this whole plan was above board, then why the urgency? Why is the coronation being done while Ram and while Bharat and Shatrugna are away? Didn't say that, but the king is not about to die. Why do this so suddenly? Why do it in the absence? Now there are multiple reasons given by the commentators. One was an auspicious time that was there immediately, and it was not there for quite some time after that. And Dashrath Maharaj had some premonitions that something terrible is going to happen, and he wanted to do the auspicious activity before that inauspicious phase started. But there are multiple reasons like that. There's nothing suspicious over it. That's definitely not a conspiracy. So something situational that brought her to the level of realization. But beyond something situational, there was something existential. Existentially, something is much more consistently there. So there was the insecurity among the queens. The tension among the queens is much insecurity. So whenever somebody succumbs to something, somebody is complete U-turn, that doesn't happen just because there's some temptation, there's some provocation. We all, when we are tempted and we are provoked, we may all do some wrong things. But say if we get angry with someone, and if we get angry, you might yell at that person. You might even use some foul words. But if somebody gets so angry that they literally start beating the other person to a bloody pulp, then whatever triggered the anger is not the real. The trigger is real, but there is something much more deeper with that. Maybe that person has 100 small confrontations with that person, and all of that pent up anger is there and is coming up now. Or maybe that person was frustrated with something else and they went out the anger over here. So generally, for all of us, I said that if this is the path we plan to go along, this is the plan of our life. So we may, while going along, we might just go off a little bit off track and then come back. Or we might just go a little behind and come back. But if we are just going completely like this, if we are acting completely contrary to what our purposes in life are, what our values in life, then that happens when there is this combination of something which is circumstantial and something which is non-circumstantial, something which is much more lasting, something fleeting. That is just a trigger, but that trigger it activates something deeper within us. If that trigger doesn't activate something deeper within us, then it's just a casual indulgence, temporarily some lapses. So this was like what they say is the perfect storm. Perfect storm is a terrible storm. But there's nothing perfect about it. Because it's perfectly a horrifying storm. So for us, if we want to protect ourselves from such situations, now of course we could say there are people like Manthara in our life who may want to incite and provoke us. If there are people like that, then we have to be very careful. Generally, if there are some people, just we go and talk with them and really start thinking, so some people, they delight. There are some people, they try to mitigate other people's joy. Some people, they are just venting their own misery. They don't care what happens to others. Some people get joy in making others miserable. Like some people themselves miserable and they're just venting it out and they make others unhappy. But some people feel, if I have not agitated the other person, what is the point of my talking? So if we have some people like that, then we need to keep a distance. But more than that, we have our mind, which is also going to. So the mind will take some situation as a trigger, and then it will agitate us. And if that external trigger can catch something deeper within us, some deeper insecurity, some deeper fear, some deeper vulnerability, then we can get completely. So coming back to the incident, I'll make 2 points, then we can conclude and have questions. So first is that what could have been done by which this disaster could have been avoided? So we could say one is that Kaikeyi could have refused to hear mantra. So we could say that our intelligence is so strict that we don't hear the mantra. But Manthara, for one thing, never acted like this. She was never known to be irritable, but she was never known to be malicious. So we could say that we could give the benefit of the doubt to Kaikeyi. She was caught unsuspecting. So we can't give that benefit so much to our mind because our mind often misleads us. But we could say that we can't stop playing our mind because the mind is inside us. So we can sometimes keep ourselves busy. So that, as they say, when during our idle time, our mind works overtime. So we can keep ourselves busy so that the mind is nonsense, you don't pay attention. And that is a good strategy. But that's not a strategy that we always use. Because ultimately we have to be with our mind. Like some people, nowadays relationships are a great source of anxiety, especially among teenagers and young people. Everyone, but especially among them. So some people, they just want to be with someone because they can't bear being with themselves. And that is an unhealthy state. That we should be able to be with ourselves. Now, there are some times when our mind is calm and sometimes I just want to be alone, I want to think things. When the mind is calm, then we can reason things. But sometimes, when we are alone, our mind can just like this. So, our service, our busyness, being busy is important. But being busy should not mean that we are constantly running away from our mind. There should be a time when we are able to be with us. So one thing, the point I'm making is that this first step, we can try to, intelligence can refuse to hear the mind. And one way to do that is by being busy. And that is good. We need to keep ourselves busy. If we just have lots of time with nothing to do, then we will be at the mercy of God. When initially the mind starts off being innocent, yeah, come on, we sleep a little bit more, take a little bit more. And after that, they say, no, come on, watch this and do this and do that. And we find the whole weekend is gone. What did I do? So it's good to have some structure in it, that we don't give too much in it. But that is not the final solution, because we will have to be with her. So the second is what she could have done is Kaikeyi didn't hear anyone else, or can they put it so? So what she could have done is she could have Kaikeyi could have chosen to hear from someone else. Like someone else who was reliable, who was wise, who was trustworthy. So she didn't consult anyone. So sometimes what happens is in our inner battle, I started by talking about purpose. If we have a clear purpose, then we'll be able to keep ourselves busy and we won't be misled by our mind. But sometimes the mind will get to us. And when it gets to us, at that time, we need to have someone whom we can consult. Someone who can walk out. This is what I'm thinking, this is what I'm feeling. So if she had just talked with them, if she would have gone and talked with Dashrath directly, Dashrath had been very kind to her. But if Dashrath was a part of the constellation, maybe she would have gone and asked Vashishta. He was not going to gain anything by whoever became successor, he was going to be the Raj, he was going to be the royal priest. So he had no, as they say, no dog in the fight, he had no axe to grind. She would have asked someone. But she didn't ask. And that is the first mistake was inexcusable. Yeah, what can she was just caught unawares. But the second mistake was far more serious. And that is where how strong our relationships are. That is very nice. So generally, when you know how strong is the relationship doesn't depend on how big is the smile when we see it. Well, that's nice because we smile and laugh and joke with others. Are we able to share the dark thoughts that pop in? Generally speaking, it's not possible and it's not advisable also to talk about this with everyone, anyone and everyone. There will be some people with This is how I'm thinking, this is what I'm thinking. Specific. And see, how can I evaluate? Can I see this? And to the extent we have this, to that extent the mind will completely listen. So, how do we do this? So at one level, we need, we could say, a regular nourishment and a specific nourishment. So regular is if we keep hearing Guru, Sadhu, Shastra. Then what happens is that counters the mind's constant propaganda that is made. The mind is something so strict and so demanding. It is so enjoyable. Why should I not? So many things feel coming. The mind is also very cunning. The Manthara did not start by saying that Kashyap is a terrible person. If that's how we had started, what would have happened is Kaikeyi would have immediately rejected. Started by you are going to do something. So the mind will never start by saying Krishna is terrible. Or Krishna Maya is wonderful. Yes, what happened? Krishna is nice. So, no. So, again, so if you regularly hear Guru Shastra, then what happens is our mind becomes exposed to us. See, we are always exposed to our mind. Even we consider mind like a radioactive element, we are constantly being exposed. But if we know something is radioactive, we'll protect ourselves. So the mind becomes, when we hear from Guru Shastra, it is not just some pious activity that we do, we go to satsang. It is actually to help us understand what our mind is. Okay. Now again, the point here is that the mind is not necessarily or always necessarily or constantly available. Manthara had served Kaikeyi also quite well in the past. And our mind can sometimes cooperate with us. Mind works with us. But the point is, when it becomes an enemy, if we are not alert, we miss. So how our mind is working, actually, Guru Sadhu Shastra. And that is why our spiritual study, whether it is individually studying scripture or hearing, that is meant to be like a mirror which helps us to look at ourselves, especially look at others. And then that is important on a regular basis. In specific situations, we need friends. We need wise friends, not just friends. Everybody has some friend or the other, but we need friends who are wise, whom we can open our hearts to. Okay, this is what. And the ideal situation is, to conclude with this point, if I am here, and this is the troublesome situation. This is the soul. And this is the troublesome situation. Then what happens is our mind acts as the filter through which we are looking at it. There is something which is troubling me, and when we look at it through the mind may make it 100 times bigger. There is something wrong, but the mind may make it seem like gigantic problem. It's far bigger than what it is. Now, in one sense, if somebody speaks to us, if there's somebody whom we don't really trust very much, and then that person starts speaking very kindly, very sweetly. What does this person want from me? So what happens is most people, we actually perceive through our mind. And it's fair enough. Our mind is around us and we perceive through our mind. But if we have even one person whom we can perceive separate from us, that means what happens is, you could put another way, to put more clearly, we look at our mind through that person. The mind is very close to us and it is always going to be close to us. But a really close friend is someone who is closer to us than our mind. So we can share our mind's thoughts, fears, cravings, whatever dark things are there over there. And then we are not so afraid. This person going to judge and leave. This person, okay, this person my admission. Okay, how can I see it? How can I make sense of this? And then they say, yeah, your feelings are understandable. You consider response. So when we do that, they give you some questions. And then you see, the mind does not start with complete lies. It may end with complete lies, but it does not start with complete lies, because then it will not have any case at all. So start mind mantra started with, yeah, why is this conversation things done so fast? But from there it built a huge edifice, a castle of illusion, a palace of illusion. So for us, okay, this is right, this is where this will be. So, and now how do we get a friend like this? We say, it's very difficult. Yeah, it's difficult. But the way we get a friend like this is by becoming the friend. That means if somebody shares something which is generally whenever people share something, how do we respond? So we can make how do we think like this? If we become judgmental, if we become critical, then so if we let okay, this is what I want to do. Then if we are we are not piling on them, we are understanding. And we're trying to then either that person will help us later on, or Krishna. Krishna will guide us to somebody who will help us. But if we are very judgmental, we are quickly labeling people. We all have to make judgments. We can't avoid making judgments. But judgmental means like fixing labels on people and putting permanent labels on them. When that happens, then it will be very difficult for us to open it. Because the more we put labels on people, the more we'll be afraid that people will put labels on us. But when we are not putting labels on people, then what is happening is that we will radiate a particular personality, a particular nature. And then we will also gain the sense who is the person who is not going to label. In many ways, when people have mental health problems and they go to psychotherapists and just want to clear their heads. They want somebody who will talk with them and who will be non-judgmental. Problem is that person, if you have no relationship with that person, and first you have to develop a relationship, and that person has their value system, and they will guide according to their value system. So things can become uncertain. So if we can cultivate friendships, then we can go where we can share our hearts. And the sharing our heart is not something which is just insensitive. We also integral member of practices. We share our heart in confidence and we hear others share their heart. When we start doing that, we find that many of our minds troubles. Mind may trouble us, but the trouble won't torment us so much. The trouble won't mislead us so much. Now, this did happen perfectly. The one person that she did not suspect was in the conspiracy was Bharat. And that's why when Bharat finally came, and Bharat just said, what have you done? Bharat's reaction was completely opposite to what she expected. Bharat was, of course, very judgmental for there. That's a different point. But the point was, she was not seeing Bharat through her mind. Okay, my mind is everything, there's a conspiracy out there. She had a victim mentality. I'm being victimized and I had to protect myself. And everybody out there is a victimized. She had enough faith in Bharat that Bharat is not out to be victimized. And that's why when Bharat spoke to her, that's when she came out. Bharat spoke strongly to her. Sometimes it may also be that when we speak with somebody who's trustworthy, they just smash and expose our misconceptions. Sometimes it's good that they're gentle, but sometimes some ideas are really terrible and they need to be exposed. They need to be strong. But it is only when Bharat came back and Bharat spoke to her. Oh, lady, what have I done? That's when she realized this. That's when she repented. That's when actually she reformed so much that she herself came with Bharat to beseech Ram to come back. So Kaikeyi is not a bad person. She's a good person who did a terrible thing. And in that sense, her life's trajectory is actually much more relevant for us than say the life trajectory of somebody like Ravana. You can learn from Ravana's example also. But Ravana is always a dark. Most of us, if we are practicing, if we are interested in practicing bhakti, there is some level of goodness within us. But the scripture also describes this as good people end up in bad things. And how they end up in bad things is helpful for us to learn so that we can either avoid those things happening from us, happening to us, or at least if they happen, we are prepared and we do. It's very important. The opportunity for all of us. We have the association of devotees. We have a spiritual movement which where our intelligence can be nourished, where our minds, action, shenanigans can be exposed to us. And that is something which is very resource that is available for all. If we avail of it, we come to satsang regularly, we hear and read regularly, we understand what we and within that association, we try to find some like-minded friends, some people who can share our life. This will not be many, even if one person also is there, that's also a big influence. So we do that, and we have the resources, take ourselves from our mind, and thus come back on the right track. Avoid going on the right track, stay on the right track itself, or even stray away to return to the track. So to summarize, I spoke 4 broad points today. I started first by talking about this particular verse which describes the mind intelligence dynamics and how Manthara is actually telling you are foolish, you're not seeing what danger is coming. So the mind is actually taking over the intelligence. So in that connection, I discussed about the metonymical way and how this is a history, but it is more than history. It's not metaphorical, it is metonymical. Then the second point we discuss is how our mind works. Talk about 2 things. There is something which is circumstantial, and then there's something that is existential, something deeper. So many things may provoke us and we become angry. And that the circumstantial comes and goes. But if something provokes us into a horrendous overreaction, and that means it's triggered something inside us. So for us to be able to deal with this, if we don't want to wait, if we want our intelligence to be nourished so that we can go on the path of our life. I started by talking about how our purpose limits our choices within a reasonable range. So generally the mind may mislead us, but it keeps us within the purview of the purpose. It just deviates us a little bit. But when the mind deviates us terribly, it's because of 2 broad factors. The first is that what happened to Manthara? He heard the mind. So she heard very well. So Kaikeyi heard Manthara. So similarly, we try to avoid hearing her, and that is one way is to keep ourselves busy. Busy, not just running around with me, but constructively engaged. That is one way to protect ourselves. The second is through friendship. It is so in one sense, through busyness, what we do is we learn to neglect the mind. And through friendship, through satsang, we learn to correct the mind. So Manthara-Kaikeyi could have just avoided hearing Manthara, but if at all she has to hear Manthara, she could have heard from someone else. So we can't always neglect the mind. We can try to, but if we can't, then we need to have some resources to correct the mind. And if we have those 2, we keep ourselves purposefully engaged, and we keep nourishing our intelligence, and we keep nourishing good relationships, close relationships, then we can protect them. And we can move ahead purposefully. Thank you very much. Hare
Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare.